That's one. Thank you very much. So I want to give you a brief overview of what we're planning today and this week, because this event is not just a one-off opening event. This is a set of events, and it's supposed to mirror what the EU4Ocean Coalition is doing. So the EU4Ocean Coalition really is composed of three elements and three components that have been working tirelessly during the last 2 years to bring together organizations, institutions, and individuals to share knowledge about the Arctic Ocean and also among other sea basins. So we have three components, and all three will be reflected in today's events. The first one is the EU4Ocean platform that really brings together the different organizations and individuals. That is going to be presented also in this morning's session. The second one is the European Blue Schools Network that brings together schools across the EU and will also be seeing a specific teacher workshop highlighted here in orange later today at 4 p.m. Central European time. And the third component is the Youth4Ocean Forum, which our colleagues from different organizations are presenting later today at an event starting at 6 p.m. CET. So all three components of the EU4Ocean Coalition will be shown and highlighted in the course of today. And you see also that this event is not a standalone and not just a one-off event. It's a very busy time for Arctic and Arctic Ocean literacy. So just last week, we saw the Arctic Science Summit Week taking place. And in the next 2 days, there will be the High North Dialogue taking place. So at the end of the week, you'll see here an extra green slot. This is going to be our conclusion session, where we will share insights from all the events we are having today, share highlights also from the underlying Ocean Literacy Festival, which we're having in a virtual space the whole week, and give us some guidance as to where go next and how to interact with the different communities that we are presenting today. So today, let's listen to the Arctic Ocean and celebrate the knowledge on the Arctic Ocean. Maybe one thing before we start and turn to our welcome words by our first speakers, one more very important point. I'm not sitting in the Arctic right now, but I'm also not from the Arctic. And one very important, if not the most important thing to learn about the Arctic is that it is the home to about 4 million people, including local residents, including many indigenous peoples and rights holders that have lived in the region for time immemorial. So their rights to free, prior, and informed consent, the protection of and respect for their knowledge are non-negotiable and key to any Arctic event. So what you are hearing from me might not represent direct an Arctic view, but what we are trying to do today is indeed to share our respect for the people in the Arctic with all of you participants and encourage you to follow that way too. So turning to the official opening, we are very happy to have received a video message from our the EU Arctic Ambassador, Michael Mann. And he will touch upon the main issue, why it is so important to bring people together to create and share knowledge that is at the core of ocean literacy and thus also at the core of EU4Ocean. And so if we have the video ready, please start the video message from Michael Mann. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. I apologize that I can't be there in person, but I guess if there's one positive that's come from the pandemic, it's that we are now much better versed in communicating with each other through the wonders of electronics. I wanted to start, if you don't mind, briefly by mentioning the issue that I think is foremost in everyone's minds at the moment. These are pretty horrendous times, and it seems unbelievable that these events could be unfolding in Europe in 2022. And our thoughts at this time are naturally with the people of Ukraine and with all the victims of this completely unjustified and unacceptable aggression. The EU and the international community, I believe, have shown incredible unity and strength, and we hope that the measures we've taken will have the desired effect and that this madness will end soon. Moving more specifically onto Arctic matters, as you may have seen, the 7 like-minded member states of the Arctic Council, excluding Russia, have agreed to cease working with Russia, and we welcome their decision. Likewise, Russia has been excluded from regional bodies such as the Barents Euro-Arctic Council and the Northern Dimension Policy Framework, among many others. But I think it's very important to make the point that this does not mean that we can give up on vital Arctic cooperation. On the contrary, Arctic cooperation is now more important than ever. It must continue to the benefit of the region and the people who live there. And we're currently discussing here in Brussels with our many like-minded partners how this can best happen. And events like yours today are a perfect example of the sort of people-to-people cooperation that we need at this time and in the future. Now, to get onto happier matters, let me first of all congratulate you on this excellent event. The EU4Ocean project is a sign of the EU's deep commitment to Arctic ocean literacy. It's great to see that you've put together a range of fascinating events under the umbrella Let's Listen to the Arctic, including practical teacher and youth workshops. Over the 2 years I've been doing this job, I've come to recognize the crucial importance of ocean literacy and the need to spread knowledge of and respect for the Arctic and its people. I want to tell you a little bit today about recent developments in the EU's Arctic policy. On the 13th of October last year, the High Representative and the European Commission approved the EU's updated Arctic policy. Our paper is entitled A Stronger EU Engagement for a Peaceful, Sustainable and Prosperous Arctic. The Arctic has changed dramatically in recent decades, and especially quickly in the 6 years since our last policy paper was released. Climate change is having a dramatic effect in Arctic regions. The Arctic is warming more than 3 times faster than the global average. Melting ice and thawing permafrost threaten the livelihoods of communities which have lived in the Arctic for centuries, and they cause untold damage to fragile Arctic ecosystems. This also has enormous ramifications for global climate patterns and accelerates global warming. Yet at the same time, some actors see new opportunities, and geopolitical interest in Arctic matters has grown hugely. As a major geopolitical and economic player, the EU must react to these challenges and bring its Arctic policy into line with its political priorities, not least the EU Green Deal. The EU is committed to upholding a safe, stable, sustainable, and prosperous Arctic, which must remain a region of low tension and peaceful multilateral cooperation. The EU is in the Arctic. We have strategic and day-to-day interests, both in the European Arctic and the broader Arctic region. It's a terrible old cliche, but it's also true. What happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. Likewise, the climate crisis the Arctic is facing is not caused by the activities of the around 4 million Arctic inhabitants, but by the actions of the 7.8 billion people who live south of the Arctic Circle. Put it in short, the EU engagement in the Arctic is a necessity. We recognize, of course, that the Arctic states have the primary responsibility for what happens on their sovereign territory. Yet many of the challenges the Arctic faces can best be tackled through regional or international cooperation. For the first time, the EU's Arctic policy has a separate chapter on the geopolitics of the Arctic and how the EU wishes to position itself there. International cooperation is vital to keep the Arctic a region of peace and prosperity. As many of you probably saw, 2 of our proposals gained the most media headlines. Firstly, our push for oil, gas, and coal to stay in the ground and to work with our partners towards a long-term moratorium on further hydrocarbon reserve development in the Arctic. And secondly, our plan to establish a European Commission office in Nuuk, Greenland. But there is, of course, much more to the policy than this. The European Green Deal is at the heart of the EU's Arctic engagement, together with the Fit for 55 package, our biodiversity policy, and the EU's approach for a sustainable blue economy, supported by science, innovation, and regional investment. We're at a point in time where we are no longer discussing whether we need a green transition, but how we want it to look. What kind of societies do we want to live in, and how do we get there? The High North has a key role to play in this transition. Arctic regions are already in the vanguard of extremely interesting developments and have huge potential to lead the green transition. Obviously, the Arctic regions need economic development, but at the same time, there are many interests at play, and this process must be steered very carefully. Green jobs are one thing, but there's also a need for accompanying infrastructure for local communities. Indigenous communities have justified concerns about potentially negative effects on their way of life, depending upon how we go about this transition. We believe that the green transition must be a double one, away from reliance on hydrocarbons and towards a carbon neutral economic system. We take a very firm stand on this in our new Arctic policy, and this has not won us friends everywhere, but it is wholly consistent with our global leadership on climate action. As I mentioned earlier, we call for oil, gas, and coal to stay in the ground, including in the Arctic, and will, and I quote here, work with partners towards a multilateral legal obligation not to allow any further hydrocarbon reserve development in the Arctic or contiguous regions, nor to purchase such hydrocarbons if they were to be produced. People have accused us of double standards when promoting a moratorium on hydrocarbon extraction, while at the same time encouraging mining of the minerals that will be so crucial to the success of green energy, another prominent feature of our policy. When it comes to these critical minerals, we currently rely heavily on mining in other countries where the social and environmental standards are a matter of great concern, and the political situation is often unstable. We need to think of the EU's strategic autonomy in minerals while ensuring the highest possible environmental and social standards, also with our partner countries. It's our dream that through the green transition, Arctic regions can showcase future compatible job creation in sectors including green energy, sustainable approaches to connectivity, tourism, and innovation. We also aim to act against major sources of pollution affecting the Arctic regions in the air, on the land, and at sea, such as plastics and marine litter, black carbon, chemicals, and transport emissions, as well as the unsustainable exploitation of natural resources. We will continue actively to implement the agreement to prevent unregulated high seas fisheries in the central Arctic Ocean. We will support marine protection in the Arctic Ocean by pushing for the establishment of marine protected areas. One of the biggest challenges the Arctic faces is the thorium permafrost. Vast amounts of crucial infrastructure are built on permafrost, and this is becoming unstable as temperatures increase. The thaw also releases huge volumes of methane, a very powerful greenhouse gas, and thawing permafrost threatens to release pathogens long frozen in the ice. The EU will therefore promote research and cooperation on the effects of thawing permafrost. We will use our research budget and expertise in Earth observation to better understand and counter the effects of climate change. Crucially, our Arctic policy must also put people first. We will invest in people and sustainable jobs, increase the involvement of the young, women, and indigenous peoples in Arctic decision-making. For the first time in our Arctic policy, we make a direct reference to the principle of free, prior, and informed consent before taking decisions with an effect on indigenous peoples. We will use funding available from several programs, for instance, Horizon Europe, our regional funds, our connectivity and space programs, to create opportunities for innovative companies. Over the last 7 years, the EU funded around 300 million euros of Arctic research under the Horizon 2020 program, notably on climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable development. This commitment will continue under Horizon Europe, as will our commitment to regional development funding in northern Sweden and Finland, and our financial support to education in Greenland. Doing the research is one thing, but it's equally important to disseminate the results of this research, to bring in indigenous knowledge and link research to the creation of jobs in innovative sectors. And that is where the sort of networking and exchange of ideas you will be doing today is so important. We need to talk to each other and share our knowledge. So let me underline again our appreciation of your efforts and wish you a very successful conference. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, and thanks to Michael Mann, who can't be with us, unfortunately, in person today. But thanks for the overarching view and providing us with that conceptual background to our meeting. And indeed, I think it's clear that cooperation in the Arctic region has been severely impacted, but of course is crucial to really work towards solving these issues that we're facing. And cooperation in Arctic Ocean literacy is still required, and I would say more than ever before. So challenging times, but they require even more efforts to compensate for the things that are lacking. Following Michael, I have the honor to hand over to José Miguel Roncero Martin from the Directorate-General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. The Directorate-General is making the EU4Ocean Coalition possible, and I'm very grateful for their support. So without further ado, please, Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arne. Good morning, dear colleagues, and I hope you can hear me. Just checking with you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
fine.
perfect.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot, and many thanks for inviting me to participate in this event. Let me start by joining Michael Mann in condemning the Russian aggression against Ukraine. It is an unprovoked act and has changed, indeed, cooperation in the Arctic. Yet, as noted by Michael, this doesn't mean that cooperation in the Arctic should stop. On the contrary, Arctic cooperation should and must continue. We need to learn more about the Arctic, and we need to understand it better. We need to continue learning about and from the Arctic together with those who live there. Knowledge of and respect for the oceans, and in this case, the Arctic Ocean, is as relevant as it could be. This is the reason we refer and go back to the principles of ocean literacy, for it is the starting point and the foundations for knowledge, understanding, and science-driven approaches. Events like this one exemplify the commitment of the European Union and Europeans to better understand the Arctic, its environment, and its people. And by doing this, we also invest in actions that promote ocean literacy. Let me be clear, the EU is committed to protecting our oceans, to ensure a sustainable future, and to increasing ocean literacy. The EU4Ocean Coalition is a success story and a best practice that at the same time, we cannot take for granted that people are fully aware of how much we benefit from and depend on our oceans. Ocean literacy needs to be higher in policy-making agendas, for which advocacy and awareness raising, and therefore events like this one we are participating in today, are very relevant. Discussing issues of relevance to the Arctic Ocean, like its role as a climate regulator, brings forward knowledge that can be put into action by supporting and informing policies. As the EU noted in its recently updated Arctic policy, the October 2021 joint communication, the Arctic provides a lot of resources to Europeans, from food to energy, from raw materials to manufactured products. This needs to be known, and the impact we collectively have on the Arctic needs to be better understood. The Arctic is also a marvelous natural space with high ecological richness, but it doesn't mean it's only wilderness. The Arctic is home to millions of people who have the same aspirations we all do: safe and prosperous lives, access to good education and services, acknowledgement of their contributions to the world, and respect for the rights and needs. The EU Arctic policy focuses on maintaining a peaceful, safe, and stable Arctic, addresses environmental and climate challenges, and supports the sustainable development and prosperity of the region and its inhabitants, including, of course, indigenous peoples. Michael said that what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. This statement is as obvious as it is true. Climate change is changing the Arctic. Water temperature changes are already affecting migration and reproduction patterns of fish and of other sea species in the region. Melting of ice and thawing of permafrost in the Arctic will further accelerate climate change, and those changes will trigger knock-on effects that will be felt by Europeans and throughout the world. The impact of climate change in the Arctic cannot be understated. This is why the European Green Deal is at the heart of the EU Arctic policy. The Arctic policy also calls to bring more EU to the Arctic and more Arctic to the EU. This, we believe, is a two-way exchange path and is the way forward to establishing long-lasting and mutually beneficial partnerships. It is a path where the needs and rights of local people, in particular indigenous peoples, are respected. It is a path where effective involvement and engagement, as well as free, prior, and informed consent take place. It also means that the EU needs to understand the Arctic better. Mainstreaming Arctic topics also means raising awareness and fostering knowledge about the Arctic. The EU will also keep supporting Arctic research and innovation and knowledge generation on the Arctic, in the Arctic, and with the Arctic. Research is at the heart of EU Arctic policies and actions in the Arctic. As Michael mentioned, between 2014 and 2020, the EU invested more than 200 million euros in Arctic research under Horizon 2020, and we will continue doing so via Horizon Europe for the period 2021-2027. Our space programs are essential in this regard. For example, Copernicus operates a dedicated Arctic monitoring and forecasting center. We want to multiply synergies between the scientific and traditional knowledge to further cooperation with indigenous peoples, notably in co-creation and execution of research programs. The European Commission will also open an office in Nuuk in Greenland. This will be the Commission's northmost office yet, and will help foster relations with Greenland, but also with the Arctic at large. Our commitment is also towards those living in the Arctic. We want to stimulate a green and blue transition, sustainable future, so that the Arctic can showcase future compatible job creation to the benefit of those living in the Arctic, as well as the European Union. The Arctic Ocean and its different seas are the backbone of the sustainable green and blue economic future of the Arctic. Blue economy sectors include food, renewable energy, or tourism. Innovative technologies related to satellites, big data, artificial intelligence, or advanced modeling can enable sectors such as shipping, fisheries, and tourism to improve their sustainability and circularity. And again, knowledge of and respect for the Arctic and its people are a guiding principle of the EU's Arctic policy. The EU will continue engaging with Arctic stakeholders, including through a regular EU Arctic Forum and Indigenous Peoples Dialogue, which bring local, indigenous, and youth perspectives to the EU. The European Union advocates for applying a knowledge and ecosystem-based and precautionary approach. As a quick example, you know that in June 2021, the agreement to prevent unregulated high seas fisheries in the Central Arctic Ocean entered into force. This agreement covers the high seas portion of the Central Arctic Ocean, an area which is, give or take, same as the Mediterranean Sea, so a big chunk of the Arctic Ocean. It bans unregulated commercial fishing at least until 2037 and sets a precautionary and science-based approach to gain knowledge about the area. The EU has been championing this agreement, as well as providing support to generating scientific information under its remit. The Arctic is faced with multifaceted socioeconomic and demographic challenges. Some of them are known and some of them are emerging. The 2021 Joint Communication, the EU Arctic Policy, offers a flexible and comprehensive policy framework for the EU to tackle these challenges together with partners. It is also a way for the EU to show commitments towards the Arctic Ocean, and ocean literacy. The European Union will keep working with local and regional authorities, as well as with indigenous, women, and youth representatives to promote regional cooperation and governance, and to contribute to the sustainable and equitable development of the Arctic to the benefit of its inhabitants. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for demonstrating the relevance of ocean literacy in the Arctic, as well as in all other oceans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel, and thanks for guiding us in the coming exchange and providing the additional background. So turning to our next segment, I would like you to remember the three elements of EU4Ocean Coalition that I mentioned in the beginning. We have the EU4Ocean platform for the exchange, we have the Blue Schools Network, and the Youth for Ocean Forum. So since our teacher workshop and youth workshop will focus on the latter elements, and the Youth for Ocean member will share her insights on the forum shortly, let me explain a bit more on the EU4Ocean platform, and maybe we can share my slide. There we go. Maybe the previous one, if that's possible. Sorry, then it's another one coming up. Yeah, that's fine. So we have seen in the last 2 years many events. So we have developed together in different working groups on the climate and ocean, on the ocean, food from the ocean and the clean ocean, on several topics, and created not only events in a number of sea basins, including the Atlantic, North Sea, the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean, but also made available concrete action. So you see here a launch of the Coastal Code. There were regular platform meetings with all the different members from the different countries. And I think there is a slide on with the country overview, if you can please forward to that. Thank you very much. So also online, you can see that we'll have EU4Ocean's platform members across the EU and across all sea basins. And also you'll see here the project of Young Ocean Advocates, a youth ocean forum component, also spread out across the EU. So all in all, over 127 member entities, and it's still growing. So if you or your organization would still like to join, we very much welcome that. And again, you can participate in these three working groups: climate and ocean, food from the ocean, and healthy and clean ocean. So giving now an insight in the activities of EU4Ocean platform, I would like to hand over now to our next speakers. And the first one is our chair of the EU4Ocean platform, Paula Kakanpää. Paula is the director of the Marine Research Center of the Finnish Environment Institute, Syke, and she's an expert for both the Arctic and the Baltic Sea. So I'm really looking forward to your insights, Paula, about ocean literacy in its many different forms and also the different elements. So we can stop sharing my presentation, and Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arne, for the invitation to have this little opening talk in this important event. So my talk reads as follows. Practically, the Earth is one great ocean whose all seas are interconnected. The conditions in the Arctic Ocean differ from other seas because it's so cold. There is ice, it snows, it's completely dark in winter, and the sun does not set at all in summer. Everything is extreme. Due to snow and ice, the Arctic region is very sensitive to changes in temperature. Although the Arctic can still be seen as a wilderness and a bit mystical, it's anything but uninhabited. Surely it's sparsely populated. The population density in Finnish Lapland, where I'm from, is only 2 people per square kilometer. In Central Europe, it's up to 400 people per square kilometer. As it has already mentioned, the circumpolar Arctic is home to about 4 million people, 10% of whom are indigenous peoples. The only indigenous people in the EU are Sami, living in northern Scandinavia and having their own languages. Finland is one of the 8 Arctic countries. It's not a coastal state of the Arctic Ocean, but the conditions we have are quite Arctic. For example, the Baltic Sea freezes every year. Many species there are dependent on ice. For example, a ringed seal gives birth in a snow cave on the ice. And nutrients released from ice in spring feed algae and further fish stocks and the entire ecosystem. Like in the Arctic, global warming is also affecting the Baltic Sea. Long-term monitoring shows a clear trend. The winter ice cover is decreasing. It makes the life difficult for the ice-dependent ecosystems. Due to climate change, ice-covered seas are in dangerous habitats, both in Arctic and in Baltic Sea. I myself used to be a sea ice scientist, studying and drilling through ice pressure ridges in the middle of the Baltic Sea. That's when I watched icebreakers helping merchant ships to pass through the wide ice field. From the point of view of winter navigation, an extended open water offshore season can be a relief, but when thin ice is present, storms break it easily and pile it as, say, 5 to 10 meters thick ice ridges that are very difficult for even icebreakers to go through. This phenomenon should be taken into account when dreaming of new shipping routes also in the Arctic Ocean. Right now, the snow is melting here in Helsinki. We are waiting for our short and beautiful light summer. The migratory birds are returning. Terns come here to nest from the other side of the globe, all the way from the Antarctica, which, by the way, shows how far the regions of the Earth are connected to each other. The other example of interconnections is the fact that nature, sea and air currents in the Northern Hemisphere are mostly from south to north. This means that emissions from Europe's densely populated industrial areas flow into the Arctic and accumulate into its ecosystems. Microplastics or harmful compounds are found all around in the Arctic, sometimes even greater concentrations than in the more southern areas. The oceans and the Arctic are far from our everyday lives, and we seldom think that whatever we do, it impacts in the marine environment and ultimately far away in the Arctic. That's why it matters so much how we operate and how we use information to advance more sustainable ways of living. But then perspectives how information should be used can differ depending on where you look at the issue. For example, we have an acute need to move from fossil to renewable energy. There are free rivers and open land areas in seemingly uninhabited Arctic. But what does a dam, industrial wind farm, or a new mine mean for traditional reindeer husbandry of Samis or sustainable tourism that is a key livelihood in the Arctic? The needs of different interests can be solved, but for that we need information and awareness. This all is why activities like EU4Ocean that raise knowledge and awareness is so important. In the end, I would like to encourage you to get acquainted with the information that Arctic organizations offer. There is Arctic Council, International Arctic Science Committee, University of Arctic, and Association of Early Career Polar Scientists, and many others that all offer excellent topical information about the Arctic, and especially all kinds of cooperation opportunities like education programs and fellowships. For example, last week, as Arne already mentioned, there was the annual Arctic Science Summit Week held in northern Norway, Tromsø. It's a large gathering of a number of international organizations working for Arctic research. The meeting was participated by scientists about 50 countries. There are open science sessions and closed business meetings of different bodies. There was also a session such as scientists and educators co-developing communication tools. Next year, Arctic Science Summit will be organized in Vienna in February. The EU4Ocean has a great role to play in inspiring and engaging people in realizing the importance of their own choices and social decisions far away from the open seas on which we ultimately depend. And then, especially the youth is the future power for the oceans, the seas and the Arctic. So I wish you really successful and enthusiastic discussions in this event. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Paula, for guiding us in and also giving the overview of the already quite extensive network being active in the Arctic. Without further ado, also let me then hand over to Timon, our next speaker. Timon at IOPAN is chairing the EU4Ocean Working Group on Climate and Ocean and is going to share his insights into Arctic ocean literacy, also from a non-Arctic state. So thank you, Timon, so much for joining. I think your presentation is ready to be shared and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arne. Perfect. I'm waiting for the presentation to show up. For the time being, I can see my face. Perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you for inviting me here. Yes, I'm involved in the work of the Ocean and Climate thematic group of the EU4Ocean Coalition. I'm from the Institute of Oceanology, Polish Academy of Sciences. I'll give you some information about the activities that a couple of members of the group have already done in the field of the Arctic Ocean and Arctic literacy. Okay, I should be able to change the slide by clicking, but it's, oh, okay. I'm sorry. How can I go back then? Because I think I clicked twice. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. It seems like it should be obvious to many people. This is based on the Arctic Climate Impact Assessment that the Arctic is a very important region. And we all realize that Arctic warming and its consequences have worldwide implications. And here we are, and we know that. But unfortunately, I will show you the results of a couple of surveys that show the opposite, unfortunately. The first one is the second Arctic Security Public Opinion Survey that was done in 2015. And what do we see? These are only the Arctic states, and one of the questions that I picked out from the survey is, what do you think is the greatest threat facing the Arctic region today? And please notice, global warming, climate change has been mentioned by quite a number of participants of the survey. Still, not that the numbers are not very high. Environmental damage and degradation, very few participants. And we're talking about a survey on the level of a couple thousand people who participate in that. And then if we ask human outside interference, intrusions, negative effects on land, north, lack of understanding and ignorance of area, people really basically do not see the threat to the Arctic from the lack of understanding of the Arctic. Unfortunately, many of the results in 2015, as you can see, it's volume 2, showed much worse interest in the Arctic issues among the participants than the previous one that was launched several years before 2015. So we can say that this showed that the interest is actually decreasing, which is a bit terrifying. That was a nice incentive for us to do our own research about about the Arctic perception among Polish and Lithuanian young learners. And it was launched by two of the EU4Ocean Climate and Ocean Working Group. Today we have with Izabela Kotyńska-Zielińska and my team from IOPAN. So we had a total of around 270 young learners from Poland and 80 from Lithuania. Unfortunately, independent of age and gender, young people are still quite confused. And I'll show you some of the questions and the responses that have been published in the peer-reviewed journal, just the selected ones for this purpose of this presentation today. We had students from public schools and autonomic. That by the autonomic we mean like semi-private schools. These are schools that are subsidized by the local governments. However, people also contribute with the fee to them. So a very simple question: can a polar bear eat a penguin? Unfortunately, we have a very large number, as you can see, of the confusion that participants say yes. It's better in the autonomic schools. Still, if you combine no and I don't know, these are absolutely yes and I don't know. I'm sorry, yes and I don't know. These are absolutely dominating responses, which is sad. Okay. The one of other questions was, how do you best absorb knowledge? We can see that school lessons in both types of schools are quite important, but which is good, I would say, for the EU4Ocean platform. It says that educational workshops and meeting with a scientist, so I would say the elements of non-formal education are very high and prioritized by students of all types of schools and in the age ranges that are depicted here. That shows that there is still quite a lot room for us, like a platform, the people who are doing all sorts of events and non-formal education type of activities to do a lot of good work with young people. However, if you ask them, would you like to enhance your knowledge about the Arctic? Then we go with these results, which are unfortunately not very, very good for us. Well, in young ages, we have yes, quite a lot of yes, but then the older the students are in the public schools, we have actually a lot of negative responses. It's a little bit different in the autonomic schools. Still, the numbers are comparable or even a bit higher for no or I don't know. That means that the Arctic, unlike Arne said that we realize that it's relevant to all of us, unfortunately, our survey shows that it's not that relevant, which is really sad. And a very personal survey that I have, I've been doing research actually for 20 years in the Arctic now. I started in 2002. So I've been to the Arctic many times. I've seen Aurora Borealis, and our daughter, with my wife, we decided to name Aurora. We did not realize at that point that Princess Aurora is the most important aurora for the humanity, I would say. So believe it or not, no one from my experience of going to different countries, talking to different people, would consider the name of my daughter with Aurora Borealis. It's, I would say, 95% it's Princess Aurora. Sometimes jokingly is about the Bolshevik Revolution cruiser. So I unfortunately, from my own perspective and the perspective of our research, as well as the research in the Arctic countries that was provided within the survey, the perception is not really high. And unfortunately, there is still a lot of room for Arctic literacy because people do not really feel like this is an important part of the world for us. The people do not understand how important the changes in the Arctic are for us, and therefore we have to continue with our efforts to make the big change. So with that, I would like to thank my colleagues from different organizations that I've been working on, and the EU4Ocean Coalition that allows us to do many different activities. So thank you very much, and I will stop at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timon, for these insightful views, and also for sharing how the Arctic is perceived from or in a non-Arctic state. And indeed, that's where we are also having our main audience from today, as our initial poll showed. So hopefully we'll inspire and encourage most of you and many of you to follow up. And also it shows that Arctic ocean literacy still needs to be brought to non-Arctic regions to share understanding, and what I mentioned at the beginning and was iterated by others as well, the respect for the region and its inhabitants. Thank you so much, Timon.
Thank you very much.
So to give you a bit of an insight and also trying to catch up a bit of time as well, let me hand over quickly to our next speaker. So we have two more speakers in this slot, and then we'll turn to the podcast exchange. But now you've heard about the EU4Ocean Coalition, you've heard about the general Arctic framework, all the activities and networks already existing, and you've heard why it's so needed to get Arctic ocean literacy out there, and especially learn about the Arctic also in non-Arctic states. So now I would like to introduce you to Michael Kasha. He is a researcher and at the Alfred Wegener Institute, the largest polar research institute based in Germany. And he will share some insights from ongoing Arctic projects and expeditions that took place, where they already tried a lot or are trying a lot to share the insights that they gather in an easily accessible way and to create more knowledge also outside the Arctic. He also participated in last week's Arctic Science Summit Week and can reflect a bit on those insights as well. So I see the presentation already started. I'll be quiet now. Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arne and everyone else. Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to show you a few glimpses of our Arctic Passion project. The project has the aim to advance a pan-Arctic observing system of systems in support of societal needs. For some of you, this observing system of systems phrase may sound a bit awkward, but this is meant to acknowledge that there are already a lot of existing components of an observing system, and we are setting out to install a better cooperation and a more coherent system overall. As you can see from those pictures, there are regions, the domains we are working with really cover the ocean, the ice cover, the land ice, the terrestrial sphere, and the ocean itself. Next slide, please. I can do it myself. Okay, thanks. So the reason for being of Arctic Passion is nicely comprised in a citation from Sandy Starkweather from the Say on Roads program. And due to the short time, I will not read it, but basically it says that we do need a consistent and holistic mechanism to assess observing system priorities and a consistent funding, a long-term sustained funding for the benefit of the people. Now, Arctic Passion is a project funded by the European Commission for 4 years. It has a duration from last summer where we started. And we are quite a large community. We have 35 partners in the EU and beyond. We will have 3 more partners from Asia very soon. And we are particularly proud that we have 8 indigenous communities co-creating elements of the project together with us. Since the time is so short, for everyone who is interested in our project, please have a look at the Arctic Passion website, which simply is named arcticpassion.eu. A few of our objectives, just briefly. So, as I said, to co-create a coherent and integrated and sustainable pan-Arctic observing system of systems. At the heart of our activity is a meaningful collaboration with Arctic communities, indigenous peoples and their organizations. The key is not only to expand monitoring capabilities, which are instrument-based, more the classical, let's say, scientific approach, but to include broadly indigenous knowledge and local knowledge. One further activity we are interested in to put forward is a better data interoperability, meaning that data from different sources can be used together in a joint fashion to get the overall picture and to simplify the access to the data, which then should be application ready. The goal of this entire improvement of monitoring, of course, is to have better predictions, better risk assessments, and to have a support of decision-making and policy-making for a better sustainable development. In Arctic Passion, we tackle this issue by having separated our activity into 3 pillars. And just very briefly here, the first pillar is dealing with the core observing system elements, such as improving observations, better coordination of observations, the data system improvements, which I mentioned. We have modeling support to better design observing networks. And we have one work package dedicated to developing pilot services, which will provide specific data needed for some of the people acting in the Arctic and living in the Arctic. And I will show you an example, a few examples in a minute. The second pillar, which is also very important to us, is more capturing the societal dimension of an observing network. So it is dedicated to derive social benefit assessments and economic impact assessments of improved observing in the Arctic for the societies, financial and non-financial benefits. One work package is dealing with international collaboration and cooperation. We have heard a lot about this importance today, and this is only something we can stress very strongly. We are also very actively involved in the Arctic cluster, the polar cluster, I should say, of the EU. And then we have one work package dedicated to support decision-making and policy from an international level, such as the Arctic Council, the Arctic Science Ministerial, down to a local and regional subnational level. And then we have one pillar, which is dealing with synthesis and an important outreach component. And sadly, I have no time to dive into that, but we will do a lot on sharing our activities and our knowledge gained. And please have a look at the website to learn more. So to give you a geographic impression on where we are acting, this is a map showing some of our locatable activities. The gray circles, for example, show the location or the region where the indigenous communities are living, with whom we are collaborating and who are collaborating with us. Here there are only 7, actually we are 8 right now. And the colored dots show you some of the regions where we have activities in the different work packages, such as improved atmospheric measurements. And since this is an ocean literacy program, I would also like to zoom in now into one ocean activity as an example, which we're going to do. And this is an Atlantic observing network which we are going to initiate for the Atlantic sector in the Arctic, that is. And this is motivated by a very successful similar program which has been started about a decade ago in the Pacific, the so-called Pacific Distributed Biological Observing System. And together with our colleagues from Alaska and Canada and Asia, who are running this Pacific Gateway observing system, we will install the same as part of Arctic Passion for the Atlantic domain in the Arctic. It will finally lead us to a much better integrated observing of the ocean. Just quickly, 3 examples from our pilot service, which have to do something with the ocean. We will install an event database service of community-based monitoring using oral histories of indigenous and local knowledge and combine this with science results. Very exciting program together with our indigenous communities. We will deal with improving safety for shipping in the polar seas in ice-infested waters. And we will run a service and develop a service on improving noise pollution monitoring in the Arctic, especially in the region around Greenland, for getting a better handle on noise pollution and its impacts on marine living resources. Just a very quick example. One of the prime examples for good and successful international collaboration in the past years has been the Mosaic Experiment, drifting with the polar research vessel Polarstern, 1 year through the Arctic to get a better handle on the seasonal cycle of the climate system. More than 300 scientists from 20 countries took part. And since I have to be quick, as Arne said, I will skip those. But just for you to give an impression, there were many local activities on the drifting flow and as well distributed stations around the flow in the vicinity. I was asked to say a few words on the Arctic Science Summit. Paula mentioned it already. Just to tell you, there was an add-on meeting in the days afterwards called the Arctic Observing Summit. It takes place every 2 years, and it deals with different themes like food security, data sharing, capacity sharing, and also system integration. So we were heavily involved in all of these groups. And one particular issue I would like to mention is the so-called shared Arctic variables, the concept for combining different observations, observables into packages, which then help to solve urgent questions like working on wildfires or fisheries issues. And with this, I would like to start and thank you all. Stop, of course. Sorry, Arne.
You
don't be scared.
Make my heart skip a beat out of excitement.
Yes.
But thank you so much, Michael, for the overview, and also apologies to everyone for cutting him a bit short in the interest of having you hear all of our speakers. But I encourage you to also check out the Mosaic website and its outreach activities, as well as the Arctic Passion website, to follow up on the activities. Thank you so much, Michael, for these insights. So the last panelist we'll have speak now is our Youth4Ocean Forum member, Anna-Maria Riedel. And she's going to introduce the Youth4Ocean Forum and also share a bit on the upcoming workshop later today. I think the floor is yours, Anna, please, and welcome.
Thank you, Arne. It's really a pleasure for me to be here, and it's a pleasure for me to represent the Youth4Ocean Forum, which is one of the communities that are part of the EU4Ocean Coalition. So what is the Youth4Ocean Forum? It is a European community for youth who act together for ocean literacy, but that also support and showcase each other projects and activities that are dedicated not only to ocean literacy, but also to ocean conservation more broadly. The forum is meant to be a space for mutual learning, empowerment, and this means that we leverage the knowledge and expertise of, for example, the experts from the platform. We share ideas with like-minded young people, but that we also want to make sure that youth voices are heard by other stakeholders and most also importantly by policymakers. So we are today a community of 230 young change makers that are aged between 16 and 30 years old. We have very different backgrounds and expertise, but we share a common passion for the ocean. So we now have 60 active projects and 160 actions that are conducted by our members. And we believe that together we can create impact and achieve concrete changes that address the threats that our oceans are facing, but also create a better ocean future for future generations. We have one honorary member, who is Virginia Sinkevicius, the EU Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fishery. But we also have a team of facilitators from Nausicaa, the World Ocean Network, and Action Environment. So what we do is one of our most important activities is to build capacity and empower young people through the Young Ocean Advocate program. The forum indeed offers the possibility to submit a project to obtain accreditation of EU Young Ocean Advocate. And this accreditation gives access to additional benefits than the ones that the young members of the Youth4Ocean Forum already enjoy, such as mentoring programs, guidance from the experts of the Youth4Ocean Coalition, but also resources to develop projects. Indeed, applications can be accepted every time of the year, even though we have calls that are launched every 3 months. And at the same time, the young people that participate to this call can also have a concept, and then they can develop their project once they become young ocean advocates. This program is also very important for visibility, not only because, of course, it is showcased in the events of the Youth4Ocean Coalition, but also because it is a big recognition for the outstanding work and innovative projects of young people by the DG Mare of the EU Commission. So most recently, we launched a call for Young Ocean Advocate for the Arctic Ocean specifically. And we are happy to announce that we have a Young Ocean Advocate that has a project dedicated to the Arctic, and that will be present for introducing themselves and their own project during the event that will happen later today for the youth, dedicated to youth. So another important activity that we have is the Meet the Blue Expert program, which is a series of interviews that young people from the Youth4Ocean Forum conduct with experts in different fields related to the ocean. And we have recorded all of these sessions, and they are publicly accessible on YouTube. Well, other activities that important activities also relevant for the Arctic Ocean from the members of the Youth4Ocean Forum is the participation in the making and carrying out of the Arctic podcast of the EU4Ocean Coalition. For members of the Youth4Ocean Forum have in fact collaborated with the experts from the EU4Ocean Coalition platform. And I think that this will be further developed in the next panel, so I will not elaborate on that. But yes, just wanted to say that we collaborated on the podcast. And yeah, so another point related to the Youth4Ocean Forum activities is the participation in ocean literacy events, such as the EU4Ocean Coalition Sea Basins events, but also in high-level policy events. One of the important elements of this community is also to advocate for youth participation and to practice advocacy to influence policy-making processes. And I will just name one of the most important participation of the Youth4Ocean Forum members to an international policy-making process, which is the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow in 2021. So regarding, I wanted to get a little bit into the details of the event that will happen later today. And I wanted to just say that throughout these years of existence of the Youth4Ocean Forum, one of the major challenges, and probably for everyone in the coalition, was to have to really engage youth from different communities and to bring youth organizations together. The process has been very quite slow in a certain moment, especially during the pandemic. And because of that, we have struggled also to connect sometimes with different communities and also with the Arctic youth community. And this is the reason why I think that it would be very important to have the Youth and the Arctic event today, this afternoon at 6 o'clock Paris time, because it will bring together not only the members of the Youth4Ocean Forum, but also the members of the Arctic Youth Network, Indigenous youth, Nordic youth, and Arctic youth, of course. And we will take stock of where we are with the Youth4Ocean Forum, but also identify the challenges that characterized our work, and try to identify also the potential synergies to build momentum and basically look beyond to the future of our collaboration and the collaboration between non-Arctic and Arctic communities in Europe. Of course, referred to young people. So I'm really happy that we got the chance to have this conversation. It will be in the format of a networking event, and we will have discussion groups on different topics related to the Arctic Ocean, and of course to youth participation in policymaking and youth collaboration. So I think that's it from my side, and of course, especially young people and young professionals are welcome to join us later today. And thank you to everyone who listened.
Thank you very much, Anna, and it's appreciated also all the work that you and the Youth4Ocean Forum colleagues have put into the youth events. I'm very excited to see that unfolding later today at 6 p.m. Of course, everyone here is most welcome to join us as well. So thanks to all of our overview speakers sharing their insights on the EU4Ocean platform and the activities that are ongoing, the networks that we are already providing, and the exchanges that are taking place. On something very concrete and specific, it's my privilege now to welcome to the stage Penny Clark, Jennifer Freer, and Hannah Cobains. We were supposed, and you'll see in the program, also our fourth member of the podcast crew, Stefan Kirchner. Unfortunately, due to time overlap with another event, he cannot join us and had to log out. Unfortunately, the delay, that is my fault, has led to this, but I'm very excited to still have three excellent speakers and our panelists here. Welcome, Penny, welcome, Jen, and welcome, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Arne. Nice to be here.
Hello, everyone.
Great.
Hi, everyone.
Fantastic. And so I think guiding us into the exchange and also the exchange with the audience following up, let me just give a brief teaser as to what we have done. And maybe just as the video is being pulled up, just a few words of introduction from my side. The If Oceans Could Speak podcast's direct result of some Arctic event exchange that we had in September 2020, and discussing how Arctic ocean literacy could be brought and shared with a wider audience, trying to create a more personal connection to this space. And thanks to the tireless work of Penny, Jen, Stefan, and many other supporters, we made this podcast series of a podcast that is available for download. So maybe to give the audience a brief overview, we'll start with the teaser video, which will feature some of the voices from the participants in the podcast, and then we'll dive into the panel. So Sammy, maybe you can start the video now.
Join us in this new podcast, If Oceans Could Speak,
where Stefan and I will be talking with a whole host of guests who share with us their perspectives on the ocean around them. Our focus this season is on the mighty Arctic Ocean. Our conversations will go beyond the science and the sea ice to look at what its uncertain future really means for its resources, people, and wildlife, and how positive change can arise from initiatives that are founded on education and inclusion. Most of all, we tap into the physical and emotional connection that we all have to this not-so-distant frozen ocean.
To imagine effectively a blue Arctic Ocean instead of the frozen white mass that we're so familiar with, on which Indigenous peoples have depended for millennia, I think is really going to set in motion various kind of cascade effects, as scientists call it, that are not easy to predict.
I try to move everyone to the ice regions because if you have seen it once, then you understand the life on another way.
Music is the language, and the beauty of it is that it's the most universal language of all because it's not limited to the definitions of words. So it bypasses the words and it connects to us on the subconscious level, on the emotional level.
You know, representation matters. It's really important to see others in spaces that mimic you or that look like you, that represent your same goals and values and what you can bring to the subject matter.
Thank you very much for the overview. And you've seen, you can listen still to all the episodes of If Oceans Could Speak in any, all the major podcasting platforms. So just type that word in. We try to make sure that it's easy to find and how to mix up with other podcasts. So welcome to our panelists. And in the interest of speeding up the timeline a little bit, we have half an hour for the podcast exchange and the exchange with the audience. So we'll blend them all together. And what I would like you to do, Jen, Penny, and Hannah, maybe you can give us a short intro to your role in the podcast, and also maybe one highlight that you took away from that process that we started in September 2020. So maybe I'll start with Jen as the host that you also heard in the trailer. Jen.
Yeah, thank you. It's really nice to be here this morning. So as Arne said, my name's Jen. I work for the British Antarctic Survey, and I was co-host on the podcast with Stefan. And it was just a really rewarding initiative to be part of, and it's great to speak about it again today. My highlight, I think, of the podcast was just being able to have the opportunity to speak with so many different people that I would never have otherwise met, and having that sort of privileged position of being able to ask them quite candid questions on these really important issues that we touched upon. This was really special.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks again for all the hosting that you did together with Stefan. So I would hand over to Penny and then to Hannah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and hi to everybody. And I hope you got just as much of a buzz from that trailer as I do. Listening to it again just gets me excited. And so I, like Jen, am based at the British Antarctic Survey, and my role in this was to be able to lead this fantastic team to create what you are listening to and what you can go and listen to if you haven't already, which we really encourage you to do. And my highlight, I mean, amongst many other things, is just to have sat and listened to these incredible perspectives and to think that they're now out there and available for everyone to hear. That is super, super exciting.
Thank you very much, Penny. And Hannah, you are one of our guests from the podcast. So maybe you can share a bit from your perspective of the conversation. How did you feel the process, and what are your thoughts about the podcast?
Hi, thank you, Arne. Hi, everyone. So I'm Hannah, and yeah, I'm also from the British Antarctic Survey. Seems like we got a bit of a group today. I was one of the invited guests because I study. I had a bit of a project with belugas using satellite images. I just really like being part of a podcast as a scientist, being able to
share to a different community. It's so much more engaging and a lot more fun to present your research in a podcast like this, where you can have more of a normal chat as if you're at the pub with your friends. So I really did enjoy that. But then I just loved the podcast, like listening to all the other people. It was just so interesting, like it was so diverse, so many different backgrounds. And having someone talking about music and the Arctic, I just really love that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for being a part of that, Hannah. And you touched on sort of like the diversity of speakers, and maybe to show a bit like what was our motivation behind it, I would hand over to Penny, and then afterwards maybe to Jen to share a bit how many people we actually reached, etc. So Penny, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I was very, very fortunate to have come across this Arctic workshop, and a huge thank you has to go to Hannah Campen, who brought this idea of the podcast to life to this group. And there was this discussion about creating this podcast and, you know, like, where do we want to go with it? And I feel very grateful that I had this sort of idea in my mind of discussing perspectives, and to be able to, you know, bring that to the group and for them to enjoy and like this idea and to take it on is great. And I think for me, where that like idea of talking about perspectives came from, if I can talk about anybody, it would be my hero, which is Dr. Ashley Voss. And if anybody doesn't know her, I would hugely encourage you to go and look at her work and see what she does. So she's from Sri Lanka, and she's the first person in Sri Lanka to ever get a PhD in marine mammal science. She's gone on to create Oceans Well, which is the first marine conservation and education organization in Sri Lanka. She's won many an accolade, but one of the things that's hugely important that she talks about is decolonializing science, and how 70% of the world's coastlines are in the developing world, but actually the voices, those people from those countries, are not representative on the global stage in the discussions of these places. And so the idea that she just has completely inspired me to bring that narrative into my work and to share stories where we can and bring them to everybody. And I think if we're talking about increasing ocean literacy, you know, that's hugely important, that we can talk about other perspectives that we don't always hear, especially, like, I'm going to steal the words from one of our guests, which was Kimberly Aiken, who actually used the words representation matters. And I don't think any other words could say why we wanted to do this more than that, because it really does matter that we can share these perspectives of everybody, of like different working backgrounds, you know, whatever it is, bring it to the stage, because that's what's going to inspire people to connect with ocean literacy and to want to engage with it and to share it and share that magic with everybody else. So that was kind of where our inspirations came from. And as a group, we just talked about, you know, what different perspectives would we like to hear? And so if we have a look at some of our guests, you know, we're going to the Arctic, and we had the fantastic Victoria Kutuk-Bushman come and talk to us about Indigenous knowledge. And I really encourage you to go and listen to her episode. It's just incredible. We had Kasha, who came and spoke to us about women in the Arctic, again, how, you know, maybe not so now, but previously women's voices weren't necessarily at the front stage in some of the Arctic discussions. And that nicely leads on to Hannah talking about, you know, a woman in science studying from a completely different perspective, looking at the oceans from space. So it was fantastic to have Hannah's discussion there, or thinking about not just the scientists, can we inspire other people with how else, if they want to get involved in, you know, supporting the oceans and talking about the environment, how else can they do that? Well, we brought in people like Lyra talking about how you can tell stories through music and get people excited that way, or how Thomas Wunderlich and Felix Lauber of the captain and first mate of the Polarstern, and how you don't have to just be doing the science, you can help curate the science by, you know, doing the logistics and things like that. So we really tried to think about the different ways in which we could inspire a new audience into what is ocean literacy and how they can hopefully share that and spread that. So if anyone listening hasn't listened to these, really just go and listen. Some of them, when I was sat listening to the speakers, I actually cried, because they're just such emotive stories and they're so fantastic to listen to. So definitely go and listen and share it, tell everybody, go and listen, and yeah, just spread it as far and wide as possible.
Thank you so much, Penny, for the encouraging words. And I couldn't agree more. It's been a very fascinating, insightful expertise. Also, coming back maybe to the word I mentioned at the very beginning, as we are researching and looking at the Arctic and researching on the Arctic, but we're not from the Arctic. So we did try to make sure that we'll have voices from the Arctic present in the podcast. Of course, also in today's program, unfortunately, there was overlap and time constraints prevented to have one of our Inuit colleagues who we interviewed for the podcast. So she couldn't make it today. We'll have a voice from Greenlandic University colleague later on at the teacher workshop, and we definitely want to make those voices and communities heard. So thanks, Penny. And maybe before we ask the audience to chime in, Jennifer, maybe you can share a little bit on how many people did we actually reach with the episode so far? I mean, hopefully after this session, there will be many more, but what's the current count? Can you enlighten?
Yeah, I can tell you a bit about that. So in total, we produced 8 episodes and spoke to 12 guests. So we had a couple of episodes where we spoke to more than one guest at one time. And these were recorded around spring, summer last year, and then released between October and December. And we used a podcast hosting service to distribute these episodes on all of the main podcast platforms. So you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and things like that. But this also helped us get some statistics of our listenership. So I pulled some statistics from that last night, and I can say that we reached a grand total of 1,802 downloads as of last night, which is really cool. And each episode had between 150 and 300 downloads each. We also have audiences in every continent. So Europe has 64% of our listens, and North America is second at 26%. But what's really interesting, I think, is that our listeners are really spread out within these continents. So we also know that we had downloads from 554 different cities in 53 countries, the top 3 cities being Berlin, Hamburg, and Glasgow. So this is just really interesting information to get, and I think it's a testament to how good the episodes are, that we're still getting quite a few listens each week, even though we're no longer putting out episodes. So it's just nice statistics to share.
Thank you so much, Jen, for the overview. And indeed, I encourage you to join the crowd of listeners and to expand our reach even more. So feel free to recommend it. The last episode was released just before the climate conference in Glasgow. So maybe also that's the reason why we had many Glasgow listeners. So I would like now the audience to chime in, and we've got 2 questions prepared for you. Maybe you can share the Slido link. So please, as at the very beginning, please either go to the website and enter the hashtag Arctic event, or scan the QR code with your phone, either works. And we would like to ask you first, in a multiple choice, what are the kind of ocean literacy materials that you have used already? So I put together a number of examples, including websites, podcasts, documentaries, movies, social media campaigns, apps, games, etc. And while we do the count, let me come back to our panelists. Hannah, please. I didn't mean to spare you by any means, but I wanted to explore a bit more what you mentioned before regarding the experience of being sort of able to share your insights and research over a podcast. Was there also were you approached afterwards on the podcast? And what do you think was useful, and what could have been done better? Because that's, I think, the notion we want to discuss now as well. What have we learned, and how can we further improve, and what other tools could we use? Maybe you have some insights on that.
Yeah, thanks, Arne. I mean, for me, initially, it just looked like so well made and so professional. So as a speaker, I feel like we were managed in a way that was quite relaxing to encourage us to have normal chat as much as possible. So I'd be like, actually, just keep doing the same you did. Because there was a lot of then outreach on Twitter, and now there's social medias around it as well. So that was really good. I guess I got a bit more followers. I didn't necessarily have more people chatting directly, but I guess the vision of the podcast and I reach out more people. It was, for me, it was a great experience. If anyone is considering or is invited to do one but is a bit nervous, I'd encourage you to try. Because with a team, you've had like chats before, so you had as much support as you wanted. And that's quite incredible when you think that everyone was volunteers. And so I was really amazed by this. And I mean, then it was, for me, it was, as I said earlier, it's nice to chat about science in a different way, to make it more accessible and not just the kind of scientific presentation we're used to with lots of numbers and like graphs. It's just a normal discussion between people, and having the interest from like Jen and Stefan was great. They were great hosts, and yeah, I feel like Penny just like did an amazing job at finishing and making it look pretty. Did you have more questions? More
I think that is, of course, regarding your vision. Of course, what could you imagine additional tools that would be useful to complement on things like the podcast, or how to improve it? And I think then afterwards I would head over to the results of the poll. Hannah, please.
I guess, yeah, definitely. Once, I mean, kind of linked to the podcast, but do have Twitter threads or Instagram stories. Because this year there were Twitter threads, and I personally like these, and I feel like that attracts the attention of people to the podcast as well. And then I guess for the next time, I don't know if they were there because I wasn't on Instagram just yet, but I guess like having Instagram stories, because I've heard from our comms team that now it's the new place to be to advocate research. Right.
Thank you very much, Hannah. So maybe let's have a look at the results of the Slido poll, and thank you everyone who contributed. So from our audience members, we see a large majority, of course, having used websites, but also 75% seeing documentaries and movies, and half of them are also engaging or reading in social media campaigns, and at least sizable 42% also using podcasts to inform themselves on ocean literacy. So that's quite fascinating. Teaching materials, and at least a third. So hopefully all of you interested in more teaching materials will join our teachers workshop later at 4 p.m. And then we have at the bottom end apps and games. So before I ask the next question to our panelists, maybe we can start the second poll. Now asking on Slido not only which tools you've used already, but maybe rank what you would like to see more. Because of course, availability is one thing, and future setup is very different. So you can click on those and rank them in an order you would prioritize them in the future. What do you want to see to promote Arctic ocean literacy in non-Arctic countries? What do you want to see more? And while we're waiting for the contributions to come in and the feedbacks to come in, I would discuss a bit more with you also, Penny and Jen, sort of from your experience and the diversity. Hannah mentioned also it was the laid-back atmosphere, the free exchange about scientific results in a conversational style format that helped the podcast being successful. Were there also things where you felt where we could have done differently, or trying to reach different audiences? And what would be additional ways to promote Arctic ocean literacy beyond the podcast? Maybe you can share a bit on that. And maybe we'll start with Jen and then hand over to Penny.
Yeah, thanks. I think it was a great experience as a first season to work out what works well, what didn't work so well. And yeah, like Hannah said, we're all doing this without any budget. We're just very motivated and enthusiastic. So on one hand, that shows you that you can do things off your own back and make things happen if you want them to. But again, things that would maybe improve our setup would be having more technical equipment or expertise, having more time to transcribe or translate the episodes into different languages that could reach a wider audience. I think that would be a great thing to do, but that is very time consuming. So that's our main limitation, I would say, from our podcast perspective. But I think the great thing, and the thing that I would really take home from the podcast, is that we were able to delve really deeply into each perspective and topic that we wanted to highlight. And yeah, we were able to give our listeners this really well-rounded introduction into the topic that we were talking about. And I don't think you get that from other materials such as social media posts and blogs and things like that. So for this reason alone, I think the podcast is a really great tool to be using. I think maybe one downfall of the podcast is that you don't have that direct interaction with your audience, and it would be really nice to have more sort of detailed feedback from them to see what they liked and didn't like about each episode, and that would help us shape any future editions that we do.
Thank you very much, Jen. And Penny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Ben nicely summarized quite a lot of them. I think one of the things that would have been great would have been, we had the most incredible support for promoting this podcast, and huge shout outs have to go to Margarita, Chiara, Carl. They all helped make this, like, disseminated this podcast the way it was, and the way it was able to reach the audiences we did wouldn't have been possible without them. But what would have been really cool would be maybe to create like a centralized place where people can go to, a website specifically for our podcast where people can go and get updates, or like maybe like Twitter handles, because one of the things about podcasting is you have to maintain consistency. People like to know that they're going to get content on a regular basis, on a set day, weekly, and if that doesn't happen, having a space to communicate with people where they know they can go to, or where they know they can engage with people easily, and to have that connection, I think that would have been super helpful. Maybe to incorporate that into like what we do as we go forward would be great. But yeah, I think Jen touched on it in terms of like podcasting. I think I've heard some stats, whether this is correct or not, but if you think about YouTube is saturated with videos and content and media, and a lot of sort of media outlets are saturated, but actually podcasting is still relatively new. And so it still gives you a great opportunity to share in a space that isn't currently saturated and to get those messages out. So I think that's one thing that's really cool. But also, if you think about it, when you listen to a podcast, or if I do, it's usually when you're like, commuting to work, or you're doing some sports, so your mind's not really busy, so you're really giving full attention to that podcast. And I think that's one of the great things about podcasting, is it's really an opportunity to get people where they are at a point where they can listen, and you can have that like spark moment where they just have to listen to one episode, and it can really change the trajectory of what they're thinking, and where what they then go into work and tell somebody else about, or whatever. So that's something I think is really powerful about podcasting.
Thank you both very much. And I think also, the language accessibility is one thing, but also, keeping it interesting and trying to create that personal connection in those moments when you are eager to listen and learn. And maybe it's important to say once more that the 8 episodes that we have, they're not building upon each other. So it's not a sort of order in which you have to follow, but the framework is the same, but the speakers are very, very different. So whatever is more to your interest, listening to scientists, listening to a musician, listening to, again, the captain of a research icebreaker, listening to researchers from indigenous communities, whatever you're interested in, please dive right in. So thank you so much, everyone. I would like to ask Sammy now to share the results of our audience feedback. And we see in the top 3, close, almost tied, teaching materials, documentaries, and social media campaigns that are needed more, followed by podcasts, websites, and apps. So it seems seeing that results in the beginning of what's used most often and what's needed more. I think, apps are a bit more at the bottom line. It might be very specific for that, but at least in our participants, there was, I think, a third only who had used teaching materials before, and a strong demand for more. Very excited to see that, because at 4 p.m. again, please dial in and join our teacher workshop, where we'll not only discuss with you what's needed and what's already used, but also show you existing materials and databases that you can already get your hands on and make count in this classroom. So looking at the time, I think we have to close, unfortunately. I would love to discuss with you much more, but maybe a teaser to everyone. We are already discussing a second season of the If Oceans Could Speak podcast, this time focusing on the Mediterranean. So we would leave the Arctic Ocean for a bit, but try to maintain the overall vibe and character, and our colleagues from the Mediterranean Sea Basin are avidly working on that. So we hope to see some episodes surfacing in the next month to come. So please stay tuned. And again, If Oceans Could Speak on a platform of your choice, please let us know what you think and how we can improve and share more knowledge on the Arctic Ocean. Thank you so much to my panelists, Jen, Penny, and Hannah. It's been fantastic to work with you in the last almost 1.5 years on this podcast, and a great experience overall. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And turning towards the end of the opening session, again, 2 more events coming later today, 1 more coming on Friday. I would like to, thank, first of all of you for your engagement, participation, and apologies for the time delay that forced us to shorten a little bit an interesting part towards the end, but I hope you'll be able to join and make yourself heard in the coming events, which will be very interactive indeed. So with that, I would like to hand over, last but not least, to our colleague Farah, who will share a bit more about our ongoing social media campaign and our ongoing activities under the hashtag #MakeEUBlue. So Farah, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Arne. Yes. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Farah Obaidillah, and I am a campaign consultant for the EU4Ocean Coalition. And I'm also the founder of Women for Oceans, which is a platform that promotes diversity in the ocean space to accelerate solutions. And in particular, we focus on connecting and amplifying the work of women. And we just heard how important it is to have perspectives, broad perspectives from everywhere at the table if we are going to make a positive change for the ocean. So yeah, we have heard some very insightful talks this morning, but also some very concerning facts about the Arctic. We know that it is warming at 2 to 3 times or even more faster than anywhere else on the planet. This year alone, we've seen some very extreme weather there with up to 40 degrees, more heat than is usual for that part of the world. And so I can imagine that you must be wondering, well, what can you do to help the Arctic? Since most of us here are so far away from the Arctic, what can we do? And this is just a reminder for everyone. We live on planet ocean. Our oceans are connected. What we do anywhere in the world is going to impact what happens in the Arctic. So I want to tell you a little bit about the campaign, Make EU Blue. This came about 2 years ago. We were thinking, what can we do in this pandemic time that can inspire and mobilize people, people that live far away from the ocean, people that that we cannot reach in person because we could not organize in-person events. So we also recognize that there's no single action or entity that can reverse what's happening to the ocean. Change requires all of us to work together. It requires changing mindsets and policies as governments, as businesses, and as individuals on multiple fronts. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. So to help empower people from all walks of life, across generations, and not always just the experts and the professionals in the ocean space, we developed the Make EU Blue campaign. This is a campaign that it enhances ocean literacy across Europe by providing fact-checked, bite-sized information about the ocean, and allows people to find a challenge or find a pledge that they can commit to that will make a change for the ocean, or that will bring about positive change for the ocean. It is also sort of European in the fact that we wanted to find something that really unifies our collective efforts, whether you are from the south of Europe or the north of Europe, across borders, every action we take will promote or help us get to a healthy ocean. So how the campaign works is that, as I said, there's a website, and I'll show you the QR code soon for that, where you can learn about the ocean and you can take an action that that fits with what you are able to do. Obviously, not everybody can take the same action or put in the same effort, but one thing is certain: every one of us can take an action to help the ocean. Can I change the slide, please? And these are some examples of pledges. So just to get very specific, again, these are just examples. Not everybody can commit to all of them. But for example, there are people that are pledging not to eat seafood altogether, so abstaining from seafood, or pledging only to eat sustainable seafood. Obviously, this is not possible for people that are dependent on seafood as a primary source of protein. But for many of us, it is a possibility. It is possible to change our seafood consumption behavior. There are pledges around disposable plastics. If there's one issue around the ocean that most people are familiar with, is plastic pollution. And so we're already seeing huge efforts by concerned citizens around Europe that are either organizing beach cleanups or taking part in beach cleanups. They're picking up trash on their walk and committing to do that every time they go for a walk, informing and inspiring others to do the same. But also, if you're a business, you can consider changing policies within your company. For example, changing policies around waste, around disposable plastics again. Or also your catering might decide not to provide seafood or only sustainable seafood. You could make a pledge to support a nonprofit in your area or globally, but one that is engaged in securing healthy oceans. Or you could volunteer for them. And again, as I said, you can organize in your community, write to your ministers, and so on. So there's always something that we can do. As we discussed, climate change is an extremely important impact on the Arctic and on the planet generally, and on the oceans, of course. But finding ways to reduce your energy consumption at this point, we just saw the new IPCC report. It's an absolute must. We have to all make that effort to change the way that we consume energy and reduce our consumption. So these are just examples of some of the pledges that people have already made. Can I change the slide, please?
Arne, looking at the time, could you also maybe?
Right. Okay. Well, so I'm always put at the end of the session. So very quickly, what we're trying to do with this campaign is really encourage everybody to make a pledge for the ocean. Wherever you are in Europe, make that pledge. We've had some high-profile people make a pledge already, like Commissioner Sinkevicius, but also influencers around Europe. I made a pledge, and I'll be happy to report progress on that. I'm producing a book called The Ocean and Us, which brings together over 30 fantastic experts, all women, to talk about the way we interact with the oceans and what we can all do to improve ocean health. Can we change the slide, please? So here's the QR code. And you can see on this map, we already have quite a few pledges around Europe, but we really want to see this map turn blue. So please scan the QR code and make your pledge. You might not realize that you're already doing something for the ocean by reducing your energy footprint, by biking to work instead of taking the car, etc. But it's important that we document these changes, because if we do that, not only do we inspire others, but we also send a very clear message to decision makers that we, the people of Europe, want to see action. We want to see change. We are prepared to make the change ourselves. So now let the policies follow the will of the people. So please do make your pledge. Hashtag make EU blue, and if it's about the Arctic, hashtag listen to the Arctic, and spread your pledge on social media. Next slide. I think that's it. So yes, I think that's it. So thank you, everyone, and feel free to be in touch if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Farah, and apologies for putting you at the end. I know it's a difficult spot, but I'm very grateful for the overview, and maybe that just leaves me with 3 things to say to our participants. First of all, of course, thank you very much for your time, also for your patience with me, and thanks to all the panelists who shared their insights today. And I really look forward to more exchanges today and later this week. So what you can do now as a participant is you can learn more. That would be if you dial into our teacher workshop at 4 and the Youth4Ocean workshop at 6 p.m. today. And then you can also dial into the concluding session on Friday morning at 10 a.m. So those are the upcoming events to learn. The second thing is, please pledge something as well, do something, whatever you can, or also reflect on what you are already doing and want to continue to do. And the third one is sharing, and I think Farah just made the overview quite nicely, that we can really show a bit of action on the ground. We can show activities ongoing in the different regions of the EU to support Arctic ocean literacy and ocean literacy in general. So use the hashtags #MakeEUBlue and look at the hashtags Listen to the Arctic, which will tie in specifically Arctic events. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks also specifically to the technical support who's done a tremendous job to keep us up to date and to follow with all the many different presentations and videos. So I really appreciate that. And looking forward to seeing you in one of the upcoming events later today. So listen to the Arctic, and many greetings from Berlin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.